Now, verse 23 is a very important qualifier. This saying, therefore, went out among the brethren, that the disciple would not die, a rumor. Yet Jesus did not say to him he wouldn't die, but only if I want him to remain until I come. What is that to you? There are church traditions. This includes some born-again believers. But you find it in the Eastern Church, some of the more liturgical and ritualistic churches in the Middle East, all the way to India. And I've met born-again believers who believe this. In Asia and in the Middle East, there are believers. I've met people in Greece, in the Eastern Orthodox Church, who believe this. They believe the Apostle John is still alive, that he never died. And there are some who speculatively believe he's one of the two witnesses, like Elijah and him, because they never died. Could be Enoch, Elijah, possibly John is like Enoch and Elijah. He never died biologically. There are people who believe this. Or there are people who certainly, and other people who certainly don't dismiss the possibility of it being true. And this includes some people who are actual believers. I've met them in India. Well, I only point that out in passing, but it's something worth noting. Okay. Jesus did not say you're not going to die. Now, Jesus did elsewhere say there are some here who will not see death. Well, that's true. They'll not see second death. You can explain that. But here it's something different. We always have the difference between Thanos and Necros, between Thanos and Necros. Okay. Separation from God and temporary death of biological tissue. If I want him to remain, what's that to you? You've got your marching orders. I'll give him his. This is the disciple who bears witness of these things and wrote these things, and we know that his witness is true. Archaeologists believe on fairly good evidence that John is buried in Ephesus. I've been to the place where Christian archaeologists believe John is buried. Now, a lot of the other things in Ephesus have no historical real basis, like Mary's house, the mother of Jesus. John looked after her. She was old, and she lived with John in Ephesus. Even the time frame doesn't really work out all that well, but you can't certainly prove it's true. But it is, by reliable account from not just Eusebius, but from Irenaeus, that John did return to Ephesus after the exile of Domitian, and that's where he died. And I've been to where they believe his grave is, and so forth. Anyway, these were the realities. He bears witness to it, he says. Notice he, like Peter, says, we saw these things. We bear witness to it. You do not find this in other written traditions. You don't find it in the Quran. The earliest editions of the Quran do not date back to the time of Muhammad in the 7th century. The Euthartic texts and so forth come later. These are people in the 1st century saying they saw this. They knew this. They witnessed this. And we have things like the Thyssen fragment, located at the moment in Manchester, England. It is the 1st century fragment of John's Gospel, 1st century. there have been Jewish scholars, not believing Jews, unsaved Jewish scholars, Orthodox rabbis, who have examined the claims of the Gospels from a Jewish perspective as academic theologians. These are scholarly rabbis. Most of them are professors. People like David Flusser, people like Pinchas Lapid, Chaim Maccabee, and not least of all, from the Ivy League professor from Brown University, Jacob Neusner. Also, Geza Vermesh is a Jew from Oxford, from the Dead Sea Scrolls Commission. We have a number of Jewish scholars, rabbis, professors, top universities, Bar-Ilan University in Israel, among them Hebrew University, Brown University in America, which is Ivy League, Oxford University, who state that the authorship of the gospel narratives must have been written by first century Jews in the Second Temple period. They have far too much familiarity, first-hand familiarity, with the Sitzumleben, the cultural, geographical settings of the Second Temple period in Israel, for it to be written centuries later by non-Jews, at a time when the Jewish origins of the church had been departed from, following people like Chrysostom and people like that. They were trying to get away from the Hebraic origins of the church. But the authors had too much familiarity with the Jewish culture of the first century period. Again, these have no pro-Christian bias. They're just academics. They're Jewish scholars looking at the New Testament and at the Gospels from the perspective of Second Temple period Judaism. Jacob Neusner, Dr. Jacob Neusner, said that the Gospels are the pivotal Second Temple period Jewish literature between the later rabbinic writings called the Midrashim and the intertestamental period of literature, Apocrypha, First and Second Enoch, First and Second Maccabees. He said that this is the connecting Jewish literature between the Midrashim and the Apocrypha. It has to be Jewish. There were Protestant liberal academic theologians. The Anglican Bishop J.A.T. Robinson being one of them, who had this idea that John was written later, a couple of centuries later, by non-Jews, and he became persuaded, no, this had to be a first century document. Okay, a first century document. When you've got rabbinic scholars who have no pro-Christian bias saying that this is Jewish literature from the first century, remember, John and Matthew are written to a Jewish readership. It applies to everyone, but it's written to a Jewish readership. Okay. This disciple who bears witness of these things and wrote these things, we know this witness is true. Now, if the historical accounts were to be believed, he was a man who was willing to be boiled in oil, and God preserved him. He was willing to be tortured as an old man. And there are also many other things which Jesus did, which if they were written in detail, I suppose that even the world itself would not be able to contain the books which were written at that time. Books would not have been codexes then. They would have been scrolls. Remember, the Gospels only include the material about Jesus that are important to the theological and doctrinal case they're trying to make. Jesus did do other things, but they only included what was important to establish the doctrinal theme and emphasis of each gospel. With John, it's his deity. Well, that is how it comes to an end. I need now to revert, I'm told, to chapter 14. James, will you please tell me what I missed or what was glanced over too quickly that you need me to elaborate on?
I'm not sure. I think it was Jay who was mentioning
Jay.
that. So I don't know.
Jay, are you here?
Apparently he's logged off.
Oh boy. Oh boy. I believe it had to do with oneness, but I'm not sure. Oh boy. All right, I'll have to record it separately and do it as an insertion. Right now, we are open for questions on anything that we've done, not just today, but from the beginning of the series. I'll film the insertion when I get to LA with James next week.
That sounds like a
It is.
plan.
Yeah. Questions, preguntas.
You have a question, raise your hand.
It doesn't have to be about tonight. It could
Oh,
be.
Jay, go ahead, Jay. You're back.
Oh, you're back.
Jay,
James, Jay.
you have no audio. Oh, okay. Hold on. You should be able to unmute yourself, but anyway. Oh,
Okay.
that's what happened. Yep.
$14.7. Okay. Okay. Okay, we'll do it in LA and insert it. Okay. Okay. In the meanwhile, friends, are there any questions from anything we did in this series? We'll take questions about tonight.